Hey, good morning, girl. Today is the 30th of April, 2019. I just wanted to say welcome. I hope you're doing well today. God, I'm looking pretty good today. I do these videos sometimes in the morning, and so I I'm just I'm still looking at myself for the first time in a long time, and I'm like, hmm. So golly, I am looking pretty good. Can I just take a moment and enjoy our beauty? Um, Human beings are so beautiful. I'm telling you, beautiful human beings just in general are beautiful. I mean, every one of them is just so amazing, really amazing. We're sort of like stallions, that are running on the desert. We're so graceful and captivating. It's really pretty. It's pretty stunning. Of course, all animals are beautiful too in many respects. Okay, so what is up with me today? Well, golly, what is up with me? You know, recently I'm trying to be as focused as I can in the activities of daily life. And it's working. I am trying to be more focused, and guess what? That more focus is happening. I listened to a TED Talk a couple days ago. The TED Talk sort of described, it talked about brain plasticity and what causes the brain to change. And the three elements that the speaker wanted to emphasize was that brain plasticity happens around things that we pay attention to. That if you want your brain to change in a specific way, a lot of that brain change occurs according to what you pay attention to, whether it's music, then say, so like these parts of your brain will be increased. And if it's vision, then these parts of your brain will be increased here in the occipital lobe. And if it's taxi drivers in London, well, there are other parts of their brains that increase in time. And so the speaker was talking about how the myelin sheaths increase in thickness along neurons that um, fire frequently. And she talked about like dendrites and how many connections are increased. Anyway, the main point was that anything that you practice with passion and focusing your attention, anything that are things that cause the brain to change. And I know it's a really subtle tip, really, but I've been noticing in my weightlifting that I've sort of been sort of weak in my motivation for weightlifting. Not that it's weak. It's just that it's becoming more of a routine, more of a habit, naturally, because I do it so frequently, basically 5 days a week. And what I'm finding is that in some areas of my weightlifting regimen, I'm not trying as much. Like sometimes I'll just bang through a couple sets in some weightlifting just to get through it because I want to move on to something that's more interesting or what I think is more worthwhile, say an exercise where I'm really trying to improve. So I'm finding that when I exercise, some of the exercises I have a lot of focus on making an improvement. And interestingly, I do make improvements. I make significantly improvements when I sort of add that layer of focus onto the exercise. If I just try to bang out the exercise, then I'll go months and months without making any progress at all. And, what's kind of interesting is that, you know, it's sort of whether I make progress or not, weightlifting has more to do with whether or not I'm trying than anything else. Are you trying? Am I trying to to go to failure at every set? Right? It's like it matters. Like the muscle that I build, how I'm thinking about, the exercise while I'm doing it matters. And that's what helps me build more muscle. And it's this question of focus that I've just been sort of thinking about in my mind. These thoughts, I've also been thinking about, what is it to be a fully functional human being? And I have a sense that being a fully functional human being has a lot to do with focusing your attention. It's like paying attention, and it's also trying, being effortful. I think that has a lot to do with being functional and being effortful. It's kind of interesting. There's this cultural and societal trend toward what I'd call short attention spans. There's the attention hyperactivity deficit disorder, attention deficit disorder, ATD. Anyway, I'm trying to remember what that acronym is. I get it confused with HDTV. ADHD. There we go. I got HDTV. There I go. I'm distracting myself again. That's less than optimally functional. So here, my point is, that it really is important to try. It's important to try to focus. It's important to be effortful as you move forward in your day, from moment to moment. And it's really amazing the kind of results that you can get if you do try, if you do pay attention, if you are effortful in your actions. And what does the effort consist of? Well, primarily the effort consists of being as distraction-free as possible. And actually, I'm noticing one of the side benefits of that. If I'm all wrapped up in, say, doing instead of, say, being, you see, there's this doing being dichotomy. If I'm all wrapped up in doing something and I'm trying to focus on doing more of it and doing it in a way that doesn't distract me, turns out that I'm happier. And I know sometimes this gets translated into social speak as, the busier I am, the happier I am, or something like that. It's not so much about being busy, but it is about being focused and being intentional and effortful in my activity. And I'm finding that I can make what happens is sometimes, the human brain sort of considers negative ideas of problems, right? But it turns out that a lot of the times these problems are exaggerated. And a lot of these problems could be solved by taking action anyway. The real problem is not the problem itself, but it's how much human beings dwell on the problem and exaggerate the difficulty of the problem. I mean, that's really the problem with thoughts. It's not that they exist. It's quite often that they're quite often exaggerated and they're dwelled upon. Well, what's interesting is that when you focus and are effortful in doing, you spend less time dwelling on painful thoughts. because you're always kind of dealing with the present moment, whatever it is, right? Because you're effortfully doing something. So basically, you get happier. Well, I don't know if you get happier, but you get less sad, which is good. Your moods are less negative, which is nice. So you become more functional and your moods are less negative when a person is focused and effortful in their moment to moment activity. Anyway, I'm kind of discovering this. I'm rediscovering it, I'm sure. I'm sure this is not like the first time I've ever realized it. But what's interesting is that the human brain has a tendency to get distracted. And particularly if that human brain is at rest, right? And sitting on a couch or something like that, watching TV or doing dishes or whatever, the brain gets distracted. And what it does is it tends to dwell on the negative a lot of the time. I mean, sometimes it doesn't. I've daydreamed before and had really fantastic daydreams that, are just so blissful and enjoyable. I never want to stop. But that isn't always the case. Sometimes I sort of dwell on the negative. And all that does is it lowers my mood. And for what purpose? A lot of the time it doesn't solve any problems. It doesn't solve any problems. My life doesn't get any better. It just gets generally kind of worse because my mood declines. So anyway, I've really been enjoying this focus on attention I've been having lately, and sort of trying to bring more focus and attention to my everyday life, my everyday actions. And it's really helping out. I'm noticing, interestingly, not a lighter mood, but I am noticing a less negative mood. So it's kind of funny. It doesn't get you all the way there, right? If you're stuck in doing all the time and you're stuck in being focused and doing all the time, that's not necessarily a happiness producing state. It's a flow producing state. But, a happiness producing, I think what it might do is it might be more and more neutral, or perhaps it might be more and more determined or energetic, but it's not necessarily a happier state. A happier state would involve like generative question asking, like I have to continuously answer questions like, what's good in my life? What makes me laugh in my life right now? What is something that I can enjoy in the present moment right now? These generative, positive questions that can enhance mood. And what I mean by generative is that it's basically an open-ended question. It's an open question, and it prompts a person to come up with creative solutions to answer the question. Yeah. So I guess if one could do that generative question asking about the positive, if one could do that in a focused way, then mood can improve. Pretty interesting, huh? Yeah, I've been focused on mood lately. When I say lately, I mean the last 10 or 20 years. So let's see what's going on. Guess what's going on today? I'm going to see my orthodontist today. He's going to check out these braces and he's going to go, Miguel, let's take those braces off in 1 week. Well, I hope he says something like that. This is the preliminary checkup that is just prior to having my braces removed. It's sort of okay, let's take stock of where we're at right now and Shut it down. I'm ready for that. I'm so happy that in a week I'm going to have my braces off. That is amazing. I'm so happy about it. I really am looking forward to getting my teeth back. And I could put this braces episode behind me. I'm not necessarily happy about putting all that time, that year and a half behind me. But I'll be glad to have my teeth back again. And to smile without any self-consciousness. I think one of the first things that people recognize about me when they're conversing with me is that I've got braces on my teeth. It's somewhat unsightly, unsightly. It's less than optimal, I think. But thankfully, my friends are gracious and kind and accepting, and so am I. And so, not a problem. Everybody gets them, right? So one thing I have been considering is the possibility of getting my teeth whitened after I have my braces taken off. I've been thinking that one of the critical ideas surrounding that is I want my teeth whiteness to look as natural as possible. I drink a lot of tea and coffee. And so, it does have a tendency, those tannins in the tea and coffee have a tendency to darken my teeth. And I also eat a lot of mustard and turmeric in the form of curry, things like that. And, as a vegan, curry is a fantastic spice that I use all the time. I have tried to use turmeric, but for some reason turmeric does not capture my taste buds like it might capture other people's taste buds. Although I am a big fan of mustard. Mustard's got a lot of turmeric in it. That yellow color. Whew. Anyway, so my teeth are kind of yellowish. And I think I'd like them enhanced a little bit, enhance my smile a little bit. Not a lot though, because I've seen people with super duper white teeth and it's less than appealing. In fact, it's somewhat distracting when I look at them. And so maybe a couple shades lighter, 3 or 4 shades. I could get into that, but not like 100 shades brighter. 3 or 4 sounds pretty normal. Sounds pretty natural. And if it's not white enough, say, I can always do the process again. I mean, that's no big deal. So looking forward to having my teeth looking better. I'm also looking forward to biting into apples and biting into fruit. Like I might just have a handful of nuts just to celebrate me being able to eat nuts again. What I've done in the past is eat peanut butter. I'm pretty much not eating nuts very much anymore. I'm kind of on a sort of a fat restrictive diet right now as a way to increase my or reduce my insulin resistance. I know. A fool's errand. We'll see. We'll see. Anyway, so let's move on to the main question I'm answering today. And that is, what was a childhood disillusionment you experienced? All right, Em. So let me tell you about my childhood disillusionments. So believe it or not, even though my family did not celebrate Christmas, and even though I was told early on that Santa Claus didn't exist. Now, when I say early on, I mean like probably from birth. I kind of was told by my parents. I don't think my parents ever gave me this notion that Santa Claus was real. But that didn't stop me from being disillusioned about the fact that Santa Claus is not real. I still remember as a kid being sad that Santa Claus wasn't real. I mean, I wasn't really under the illusion that he was real, but I think that even as a kid, I recognized how sad the fact that Santa Claus wasn't real is. And I resonated with that. I did as a kid. I resonated. I don't think I told many people about it. I mean, who could I tell? Everyone in my family knew that Santa Claus didn't exist. And anyway, including myself, we never did think he did. But anyway, I do remember feeling sad that Santa Claus wasn't real. Is that funny? Another disillusionment, and this is actually quite a powerful disillusionment. It happened at around, I mean, it really happened early on. I mean, I'm talking about my disillusionment about God not existing. So I grew up pretty religious, and I would say about the age of 23 years old, I sort of made the switch to being non-theistic, non-religious permanently. So, it must have been an interesting story as I sort of grew up. I think I really first started getting like skeptical about the existence of God probably when I was like 6, 7, 8 years old. And by the time I was like 8 and 9 years old, I already knew that God didn't exist. I mean, I kind of already knew that. Certainly by the age of 9. You see, kids are an excellent judge of character. Kids really are pretty amazing. First of all, kids are very logical, right? They're doing a pretty good job. In fact, I think that kids can be more logical than adults most of the time. Because, when in our youth, that's when kids are trying to make sense of the world. And they only have logic as their primary tool for making sense out of the world. That's all they've got, logic and their experience. And they're using their logical mind to the max to figure out what's going on. And, that's why kids have such interesting questions. It's not that the questions are it's not that the questions are interesting. In fact, the questions are quite natural. And they arise out of the workings of logic. The funny thing is, as you grow up, you get exposed to ideas that sort of informal logic fallacies, and you basically learn to accept them, even though they're not logical. So as people grow up, they become more and more indoctrinated, really. They get indoctrinated in some economic theory or some political theory or some religious theory. In fact, I don't know if you noticed, but some of the most indoctrinated people are old people. These are the stereotypical, like, Republicans and Democrats, libs, and all those stereotypical words related to politics. It's the old people that use those words a lot. Not necessarily the young. So yeah, people get, I don't know, as people get older, they have an easier time of dismissing the logic. Anyway, thankfully that didn't happen to me that much. skepticism is a virtue. So, so when I was 23, I got pretty disillusioned. It was pretty sad. I was feeling a real sense of loss when when I realized once and for all, really, that God wasn't real. Well, I tell you, there was a lot of energy around that thinking, mainly because that's all I had been told, really, from birth, right? That God is real and things like that. Anyway, interestingly enough, since age 23, I've never even had an inkling that the opposite were true. Like, um, since age 23, where I decided for myself that, okay, God isn't real. When I did that at age 23, you'd think I'd like waffle back and forth or something. But no, I haven't really. It's been, in fact, pretty much every idea has just I've been sort of introduced to over the last, I don't know, 25 years I've been an atheist. I haven't, there hasn't even been a shred of evidence to verify the existence of God over that 25 years experience. Nothing. Zero. You would think that there would be at least something, one thing that would have shown up in the last 25 years that would have sort of made me second guess that decision I made 23 years ago. And there hasn't even been one thing. Which actually is amazing to me. It's pretty surprising. It's surprising to me that people can be so much of a true believer in something that it absolutely does not exist. It's like people really being hard pressed to believe in leprechauns. And as they grow older, despite having been exposed to less and less evidence, they're still true believers in leprechauns. And they only get more firm in their belief that leprechauns exist over time, despite the fact that there is no evidence of leprechauns. How could that be? I know, it's strange. Old people are a riot. I don't get these old people sometimes. How can they possibly believe what they do? I don't know, man. So anyway, disillusionment. So yeah, that was quite disillusioning. Believe it or not, I mean, even though I mentioned like I was skeptical since like age 9, I did go through periods of true believing when I was highly religious in my teens and early 20s. I did go through periods where I was very high belief, and then moderate belief, and then low belief, and then back to high belief again. I did kind of cycle through that until I hit like age 23, when I just decided none of this is even true. This is all basically poetry, and this is just a book club. And I don't believe in ghosts. Who believes in ghosts? Why would anyone believe in ghosts when there is no evidence at all that ghosts exist? And so, anyway, I'm glad I figured out. I'm sad it took me until age 23. That's a long time. That's sort of a lot of wasted time. I guess maybe it isn't a lot of wasted time, but for 23 years, I believed that God was real. So anyway, that was a disillusionment. All right, so disillusionment number 1, Santa Claus. Disillusionment number 2, the existence of God. What other childhood disillusionments did I have? Let me think. Well, there was another disillusionment, and I think it had to do with just being an adult. When you're a kid, all you want to do is be an adult. And, I was hopeful. I was really hopeful that there would be some threshold that I would pass where I'd sort of have deep knowledge about the world, and I'd know what's going on really in a serious way, like, oh yeah. But fact is that really never happens. You're as an adult, you just continuously get better at living life, which is great. At least ideally, one continually gets better at living life. But there's never like this point of amazing certainty about what's true in the world. That kind of never happens. And I think that there's sort of like a disillusionment there. You kind of think that, oh, adults know everything and they know what's going on, and they're clear thinkers. But as you grow older, you recognize that that imaginary state of certainty does not exist. And so that is actually, it's sort of what I'd call the disillusionment of adulthood and certainty, of adult certainty. So, the promise of being an adult never really does pan out. That's not to say I've not gotten more confident or more certain about a lot of things. Doesn't mean I haven't gotten better in doing the activities of daily living, which I have. I've gotten better, but there isn't like a magic threshold or anything like that. It's just continual improvement, day-to-day habitual patterns of behavior which compound over time, and there's just no. You just only get better and better and better. That's all. And that's great. I mean, I feel grateful for getting better and better. What also happens is that the rate of getting better and better, the longer you live, and you do continually get better, but it makes less and less of a difference. This is I think the tragedy of human life. I mean, I have a great life. I'm really highly focused. I plan my life reasonably well. But even when I'm like really paying attention, really, I'm probably operating at a good 90% all the time in terms of sort of say overall life effectiveness, right? I'm averaging what I'd call at least a low A on a scale for A, B, C, D, F. I'm probably doing high B's to low A's all the time, right? In terms of my approach to living life. And if I really pay close attention, I could probably get into like the low 90s and the mid 90s. Maybe occasionally get like a 95 and do a slam dunk behavior and in life situations, right? And that's great. But even at that high level, it's very rare for me to get like 99, 100, to get high A's, to just keep slamming life. Boom, 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 getting A's. In terms of my, say, what I'd call my level of expertise in managing my life situation. I never get up to that 100 level. In fact, really what happens is if I'm not paying that close attention, I might be in the 85s. If I'm grading my performance of living my own life, I'll probably be in the high 80s. And then if I really try, I can get to the low 90s, but that's as high as I can go. I can only get into the low 90s. Even if I try really hard, it's all low 90s, low 90s, low 90s. Which is good. I mean, I'm doing great in terms of like grading my activity level, but it never really gets to like say 100. Maybe it does. Maybe I have peaks, spikes of 100 here and there, but I don't know. There's kind of a law of diminishing returns, which happens when there's a point at which the planning or the focus doesn't help. Planning and focus can get you an extra 5-10% improvement in your performance, and maybe even 15% improvement. But that's about as much improvement as planning and focus can get you. The fact is that there's just so many unpredictable aspects of living. People get in car accidents, sunburns, dehydration. There are social commitments, physical commitments that sort of play with things. They happen randomly. People get the flu. People, break their leg. They get injured. They get burned. Right? They cut themselves while preparing food with a knife. Sometimes they bang their head. I have a tendency to bang my head every once in a while on my cabinets here in my kitchen. So yeah, things happen, I don't know. I wish there was no law of diminishing returns. I wish the more focus, the more success I receive. But who knows? Maybe maybe I just haven't sort of reached that pinnacle of attention that increases my performance 100-fold. We'll see. Maybe I could do an experiment where I spend an entire week being 100% focused on the activities of daily life or whatever. I don't know. Anyway, let's see. What other disillusionments? Those 3 disillusionments so far. Number 1, Santa Claus. Number 2, God. Number 3, the certainty of being an adult. What other childhood disillusionments did I have? Actually, here's another disillusionment I'm going through right now. And this is not so much a childhood disillusionment. This is like an adulthood disillusionment. And it has to do about relationships, social relationships. And so here's me. I tend to overfocus on relationships. They tend to be a big part of how I judge whether my life's going well or not. And I am having second thoughts about that stance. For me, it's always been just assumed. I've really just enjoyed being around other people all the time. And I do have some extroverted qualities. And, I enjoy being around people. I enjoy being around large groups. It's great fun. Loving it. And lately I've been thinking that some of that enthusiasm may be misplaced. Because there is sort of there's sort of an inherent unpredictability about relationships. It's sometimes they go south for reasons that are unknown. Sometimes they succeed again for reasons that just aren't clear. It's sort of like the stock market, in the sense that it's pretty unpredictable where relationships will go. It's just not clear. And so latching my mood or my self-appraisals on how well my relationships are doing sounds like a mistake. maybe I shouldn't be as wholly focused on relationships as I have been in the past, given that they're so squirrely. I the fact is, I'm recognizing just how little control I have over my relationships. I had this. I think for many years I had this sense that I could craft a relationship, and with care and attention, I could turn any relationship around or anything like that. But now I'm seeing that that no matter how well you perform in a relationship, there will be what I'd call perpetual problems. That is, problems that are essentially unsolvable by you and your mate, even with, say, third party help. Even if each partner in a couple have amazing communication skills, I'm seeing this presence of perpetual problems that just arise and are intractable. And I don't know. So this is a disillusionment of adulthood, and that is that, just in short, relationships aren't all they're cracked up to be. Now they can offer relief and refuge, and they can offer happiness and joy, but almost as often they also offer sadness and loss and anger and anxiety, almost in equal measure. In fact, they may offer those negative traits in greater measure than the positive ones. Yeah, I know. I know. So this is part of the sort of this disillusionment that I'm kind of going through right now. And I think a lot of people are going through it right now. In society, our society in particular, the American society, really focuses on, say, romantic couplehood as being an ideal. And this romantic ideal, discovering that it's probably misplaced or not as critical as that it doesn't measure up, it's disillusioning. It's really quite disillusioning. I've been married twice, divorced twice, and even then, I'm actually quite hopeful that a romantic relationship will sort of I'll stir it up or drum it up somewhere. But still, the more I think about it, the more I'm recognizing that I probably don't want that. Yeah. And so coming to grips with that, when my entire life I've just been indoctrinated about the benefits of romantic couplehood, is quite a change. It's a cultural shift. It's not just me who's going through these thought patterns. This is a well-worn trail. And really, what's kind of nice, in retrospect, is that I am sort of becoming more independent as a result. Sort of more self-reliant when it comes to my emotional well-being. If if I'm slowly realizing that relationships aren't all that they're cracked up to be, then that almost naturally leads me to focus on my own resources, my own internal resources and rely on my own internal resources and develop my own internal resources. Tell me when I'm struggling. So, that's good. It's sort of a disillusionment. It's sort of like, it's a vitamin, right? When you first put the vitamin in your mouth, it tastes terrible, but it's good for you in the long run. So I think that's what's happening to me. I guess that's another disillusionment, the disillusionment of romantic relationships. Now, that's the disillusionment of romantic relationships. I think I'm beginning to think that, like, say, platonic friendships, they have greater merit than romantic ones, because with a wide range of friends, a large circle of friends, you could have a circle of friends where one minute you're hiking, another minute you're biking, another minute you're skateboarding, all with different people, and enjoying sort of the assembly of those people and activities together. And I think that you could live a far happier life with a wide circle of diverse friends than um, with a close romantic partner, with a single close romantic partner who maybe doesn't like dancing when you like dancing, or is an early bird in the morning and not a night owl like you are, say. Um, those differences can be a problem. And but if you just have a large circle of friends, that's no problem. So I'm thinking about how there's still a benefit to relationships, and I think that benefit is largely related to friendship and its various components and its various aspects. um, so if I can harness the power of friendship, that might take me further in terms of raising my mood and helping me be active and healthy than focusing on a romantic relationship. Oh yeah, yeah. And, I mean, nowadays I'm recognizing, oh yeah, having a lot of diverse friends is probably a lot better than having a single romantic partner. Yeah, I'm definitely thinking that that's probably true. So really the real question for me is, how do I take advantage of friendships? How can I really make how could I build skills that can help me develop and sort of use the friendships I have to greatest benefit? I don't know. I'm still figuring that out. So anyway, that was another disillusionment. What is that? 4 disillusionments? That's pretty good. Are there any other disillusionments? I can't think of any right now. I guess there are some potential ones, but I don't think I'll discuss them. So, I wonder, how are you doing? I'm kind of curious about what your childhood disillusionments are, or what they have been. I'm kind of curious about what transitions you've been tracking and how you've been transforming over time. What are you learning? What kind of changes are you making in your life? And what are you thinking about now? I mean, um, I've been sort of learning and reading about the millennial generation. A lot of um, talk on the news and on the internet and the news reports have been about millennials, and I think I'm stoked. I think millennials are going to be amazing. They're going to be just amazing. So glad that they're here. I'm also really kind of curious about how Gen Z, what kind of social impact Gen Z will have. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, you're part of Gen Z, and you're a freshman in high school. I mean, soon, just in 3 years, you're going to be out there going to college, maybe possibly getting jobs. I mean, that's amazing to me. So, I mean, that's going to be amazing. I'm really curious to see, what unfolds in your life and what choices you make. And I'm kind of curious about where those choices might take you. And I'm kind of curious about, what impressions you have about the past and the future. Um, and I'm actually kind of curious about what you might think about Gen Z, about what people are saying about Gen Z. Do you have an opinion about the reports that you've been reading or seeing about Gen Z? Do you think that they're relatively accurate or inaccurate? Or I know millennials think that they're getting a bad rap about reports that they're sort of lazy and not hardworking. I don't see that is the case. I think millennials are just also really just quite selective about where they spend their time and energy, and they're doing so in less traditional ways. Really, here's the thing: the internet has really brought in all kinds of international influences into the family unit. In the past, people were sort of closed off from other people, other families, other communities. They were closed off. They're isolated. But in this connected age, there's pretty much no such thing as isolation. And that's really good. I think people are breaking out of molds, they're breaking out of stereotypes, and that's awesome. I like this new way of living, this internet influenced way of living. It sure is more interesting. And I think it's bringing a relief to a lot of people. Honestly, I'm kind of interested to seeing where this gender fluid trend is going, the social trend of gender fluidity. Now, I have thought for a long, long time that gender is learned. They are learned traits. Women learn to become women in whatever culture they grow up in. And men learn to become men in whatever culture they grow up in. There are masculine traits, feminine traits, and society sort of has ways of helping men and women sort of develop these masculine and feminine traits that that have been chosen arbitrarily, pretty much somewhat arbitrarily over the years. And I'm glad that those those two sort of binary traits are sort of melding and joining, and we're all becoming how should I say, those gender containers are becoming a lot more flexible, and that's great. That can only mean more freedom, more happiness, more enjoyment among people. And so I'm excited about the changes in sort of gender identity and things like that. I know that a lot of people are skeptical of it, particularly the older generation. I think that they just haven't given enough thought to the subject. I think it's awesome. And I'm looking forward to more fashion possibilities for men. That's for sure. I have been noticing that men's fashion has been widening out. And like nowadays, men are wearing a lot more floral prints. I'm glad for that. Wearing flowers is awesome. Why there was a prohibition on men wearing flowers over the ages, I don't know why. I'm also really loving this men's fashion trend where men's clothes are getting brighter. I mean, look at what I'm wearing today, gray. And I've got some black pants on and black shoes on. So this is traditional masculine dress. I'm about to go to work today. And I'm dressing in my traditional masculine way. And that's great. But there are other ways to express oneself in, say, costume And using I love to see this trend of bright colors in men's clothing, it being widely adopted. I've seen men wear pants that are bright red or bright blue or bright yellow. It's like, cool, that's awesome. I love to see that. So these fashion trends, believe it or not, are actually moving relatively slow, but I'm glad to see them take shape anyway. So yeah, this gender fluid trend, thumbs up for Miguel about it. I think human beings would do a lot better to not have this binary gender focus. I think it's way artificial, and it's really unnecessary. The fact is that every man has both feminine and masculine traits, and every woman has masculine and feminine traits. I have seen women who have more masculine traits than even men. I mean, a lot of them. And I see a lot of men that have more feminine traits than women. Absolutely. Absolutely. And interestingly enough, it doesn't take away from their attractiveness. I find them uh, people with what I call mixed traits to be really amazing and fascinating people. And I find them to be very compelling and attractive. So, it's thankfully it's not an either or. And this a lot of these things are arbitrary too. I mean, think about it. If you think about it, when it comes to, say, clothing for children, particularly infants, whether they're, say, dressing in blue or dressing in pink, right? The boy-girl distinction there. The colors blue and pink aren't necessarily inherently feminine or masculine. And I think we all can see that pretty logically. And I think, there was a time just like 100 years ago that pink and blue weren't necessarily masculine and feminine discriminators, right? Those colors, I think it's just a cultural affect that those colors were associated with gender. And that's true with basically every other concept. I mean, every other cultural concept related to gender too. It's rather arbitrary. The fact is that men and women are pretty much the same. Pretty much the same. There's not a really big difference. And that's great. That's great to know. Here's the thing about humans. Human beings exaggerate differences. Why do they do this? I don't know. They're interested in making and categorizing the world around them. And so they exaggerate differences. They exaggerate differences in skin color. Oh man, that has really gone way off the rails. Calling people black and white and red and yellow. I know it's almost disturbing to think about. We overemphasize, we sort of exaggerate the differences between people. And it's kind of funny too when we have feelings for or say against another person, we exaggerate those too. It's kind of funny how human beings sort of live their lives at extremes of thought, right? A person is either like a criminal or they're a goddess, right? It's a lot of what being a human is in sort of a thought space is just kind of like an exaggerator. It's sort of like in our poetic, artistic license. Why do human beings exaggerate so much about one thing or another? And we get worked up too. We get wrapped around the axle when we use inflammatory language. I mean, that's what's happening in politics right now. A lot of exaggerated words being used. Anyway, it doesn't work to our benefit quite often. It often works to our detriment. Anyway, I'm going to wrap things up. Thanks for spending some time with me today and listening to me as I discuss the ideas of the day. And I hope that you have a gender neutral day today and use neutral words to describe your external reality and your internal reality. You'll be better for it. All right. Talk to you later, girl. I love you.